We're going to be taking you through a sample knee evaluation and also talking through a little bit of, the reasoning behind why we're doing some of the things that we're doing. So we have Nick here today. We're going to run through some movements with him and just give you a sample idea of what it's going to look like when you come in and actually how we make a decision based on what we're seeing. So we've got Nick here. We're going to actually start by looking at some range of motion, meaning taking him passively through a full knee bend and knee straightening. So Nick, if you don't mind lying on your back, okay, we'll grab his right knee to start, okay. We want to see if just lying here, how close can his knee actually get to the table? Whether it's relaxed and actually if he flexes his quad, can he get straighter and actually start to see this heel come up? That tells us that he can achieve a full straight knee of the knee, which is something that's really important in terms of gait and walking. We also want to see, can he fully bend his knee? Can I get his heel all the way to his butt? And then I'm also checking in as I do this and saying, where do you feel this, right? Because actually, a lot of the feedback that we get while we're moving through some of these tests tell us a little bit more about what tissues are actually involved. Another big one we look at with the knee is actually if Nick can flip on his stomach here, I'll just take the other leg, is bending his knee in this position. And here, ideally he has a really good range of motion of getting his heel all the way to his butt. We'll ask him where he's feeling this. Often people will say in the quad or front of the thigh. This actually gets the hip flexor a little bit more involved. The quad crosses both joints, so we need to look at the knee in isolation, but also take into account, what other muscles may be involved up or down the chain. So in this position, getting a little bit more of that hip flexor involved. And we'll also look at hip as well here, range of motion, strength, and ankle. But from the knee, those are some of the big things we're looking at. And then, Nick, if you don't mind flipping on your back again, we're going to start getting into some actual palpation. And what that means is I'm actually going to start to feel around in and around the knee joint and the surrounding musculature. And again, getting his feedback on what he's experiencing as I move through this. So, I can simply get my hand here, okay? I'm putting some pressure into certain muscles. This is his vastus lateralis, so one of the quadricep muscles. And this tells us a little bit how he tolerates pressure around that area. Also tells us a little bit about, what areas are sensitive. Again, helps us understand what might be involved. We might actually get around the knee itself and take an idea of, what he's feeling at the kneecap. And when you're in this bent position, it's not going to necessarily bend as much, or move as much, but we want to just take all the measures we possibly can. From palpation, we'll go next into actually some special tests. And what special tests are really diagnostic tests, or tests that help us more specifically identify what structures may be involved. So if we're looking at the knee, can start right here, okay? I'm gonna just bend and straighten his knee. And I'm asking him and also assessing how this feels, see if he gets any locking, any catching, any pinching as we go through this. That tells us that there may be some meniscus involved. And we can also take a look at other structures, such as the ACL, which is a big one for injuries. Right, I'm taking a look and actually feeling if I can feel a block here, there's some loose space, and assessing that to, again, better get an understanding of what's actually happening inside the knee. We also like to take a big look at strength, and that's a really big part of this. All I've done so far is actually just looked at how Nick's moved passively on the table. I have no understanding yet of how he actually moves himself and how his body is interacting with the world around him. So Nick, if you don't mind standing up, we're gonna come on over and actually start to go through some exercises here so that I can see how he's actually moving and how he's feeling while he does it. So, we wanna take an idea of how it actually looks, but we also wanna see, if he's feeling it in the areas we want him to feel it, and then understanding how we may be able to change movement slightly to to actually better get the desired tissue involved. So first off, just with Nick, we'll start nice and easy. We like to look at gait as a really big evaluator here, especially with the knee. So I'd ask him to just walk down and back. Can first start at a nice easy pace. And then coming back, we may tell him to speed it up a little bit, like he's got somewhere to go. We want to see a good rollover from heel to toe on every step, noticing if he's trying to offload the affected side at all. Next up, we'll face each other, or he can face forward in this example, but just looking at standing on one leg. Want to see, can he balance on that leg, right? Is the knee buckling? Are there any shakes involved? We can go to the other side. Again, this gives us a measure of some balance, also gives us a measure of some basic strength. From there, like to see some variation of a deep squat. So in this case, Nick's doing okay. He's squatting down. We want to see the hips get below the knees ideally, seeing how he feels as he does that, and he can come on up. If that's a provocative position, then what we can actually do is come on over and grab the rack. Nick can walk himself down, giving him a little bit more support, and then he can walk back up. And we can assess again how that looks and also how it feels to him. Another big part of this is actually isometric strength. Isometric meaning, can you hold a position really well? So looking at knee stability here, Nick's going to get into this position. Okay, he's going to have most of his weight on that front leg. We're really looking at quadricep strength right here, as well as some hip strength, looking up and down the chain. We're assessing if he's shaking, if he's holding steady, which he is. From there, we can actually ramp this up a little bit and ask him to bring this foot forward and tap forward and back to get a better sense of the capacity of the quadriceps, which is a really important tissue to consider when evaluating the knee. Another test we'll look at will be a step down. And again, this is one that, right here we're not doing a supported variation, but often we'll start with your hands on a rack or on a pole to actually offload the knee. We're seeing, can he actually bend that knee and straighten it with his full body weight on it the entire time? This is something, again, we can very easily change where the tension is throughout the movement. And we're taking a measure of all these tests as well as other exercises to actually get a really good full understanding of where we need to start with you surrounding your injury and where we also need to go. When we see an exercise like a step down and say Nick looked pretty shaky on it, that actually tells us that's an opportunity for improvement. That's something that's very much related to what's going on at the knee, and it's something that we're going to want to address to actually start to improve the symptoms that he's experiencing. And then lastly, we always have a conversation with you about, how you're actually feeling about some of the things we're doing, and actually make sure that you're understanding what the path ahead looks like for you towards recovery.